Welcome to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, founder of the Reiki Business Collective and creator of the Build Your Reiki Business program, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Greetings, welcome, and thanks so much for tuning in to this week's episode of the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. I'm Christian of Standing Stones Healing, so honored and grateful to have you here as always, so thank you. In this week's episode, we're talking about hosting a summit. In particular, I am going to take you behind the scenes of the Reiki Business Summit. This week's episode is actually part one of 2 episodes on hosting a summit. So the Reiki Business Summit, if you have not heard, is happening live online November 22nd to the 25th. It is an exciting event bringing together Reiki practitioners at all points on their Reiki business journey, from just starting to think about a Reiki business to practitioners who have had a Reiki business for years. Some of the things that are really exciting about this summit that I'll talk with you more about are the fact that it is live. So there are 6 speakers, 6 presentations, 7 speakers actually, 6 presentations, and each of those are live on a Reiki business topic. Topics like attracting clients, building a community, collaboration, visibility, being trauma-informed, your Reiki business brand identity. So really great Reiki business topics that are pertinent to practitioners at all points on their Reiki business journey. What's also exciting about this summit is that it is completely live. So in addition to all of the amazing topics, it is a live summit. I'll talk more about that in a little bit, but this is something that's really great about the summit and really unique as well. And the third thing that is really awesome about this summit and unique and even exciting and amazing is all of the opportunities for interaction among the attendees. And so when you attend the Reiki Business Summit, you're not just passively learning information, you are able to actively discuss it with your Reiki practitioner peers. So it's super, super exciting. But the summit itself, I really conceptualized back in April. And so back in April, I had just gone for my morning jog. I came home, I was looking at my garden, seeing what was popping up, seeing what was sprouting. And I just had the epiphany, the insight that we need a Reiki Business Summit. The Reiki community needs a Reiki Business Summit, a summit that focuses specifically on Reiki business. Now, of course, we have lots of Reiki summits. We have, of course, the Reiki Race Summit that happens in November. I'm a big fan of the Reiki Race Summit. I highly recommend that all Reiki practitioners tune into that free summit in November. But we don't have a specific Reiki Business Summit. Sometimes at the Reiki Race Summit and at other Reiki summits, online or in person, there's discussion of Reiki business topics, but no summit that is dedicated to Reiki business. And I thought that's something that our community really needs, because there is a real need in our community for Reiki business education, discussion, sharing of resources, and it's one of the main reasons that I created the Reiki Business Collective. And so when it comes to hosting a summit, the first thing that you might want to consider if you're interested in organizing a summit is asking yourself, what need that summit might fill or what need there might be. So, of course, I recognize the need in our Reiki community for Reiki business discussion, learning, information, coming together and connecting, supporting one another, sharing our resources. And so I began from that need, and the Reiki Business Summit is just one more important way to help fill that need. And so if you're interested in hosting a summit or considering hosting an event, a conference like the Reiki Business Summit, I first want to encourage you to consider what kind of need there might be that the summit, the event that you're creating and hosting is going to help fill. So is this something that your community, your audience needs, your clients, students, whoever it might be? Of course, asking yourself who the audience is very important as well. So make sure that you're clear on who the audience is for the summit, but also what need that event, that summit, that conference is fulfilling. So what is the need that it is helping your audience with? And so, of course, the need for the Reiki Business Summit that it is filling is this need for information and also the need for connection and the need for sharing. Now, in the Reiki Business Collective, every couple of months, we might have a live gathering on Zoom where everyone in the Reiki Business Collective is invited to meet over Zoom to talk about Reiki business topics. In the past, we've also had breakout rooms for deeper connection, but the more recent sessions have just been discussion of Reiki business topics, and those topics are submitted when you register for the gathering. And so that need to meet and to gather was something that was really important to me that the Reiki Business Summit met. So it was really important to me that in the creation of the Reiki Business Summit, I made sure that it included plenty of opportunity for connection and discussion and networking. This is something that is really unique about the Reiki Business Summit and something that you don't really find much of at all. So for instance, the Reiki Raise Summit, again, I highly recommend tuning into that free summit every November, but there's no opportunity for connection, no opportunity for discussion. We are receiving the information, the interviews that have been pre-recorded. By the way, I am on this year's Reiki Raise Summit talking about my new book, Reiki Business Ready. So I encourage you to grab that book now and read it so that when you tune into my talk with Heather McCutcheon of Reiki Brigade, you'll know exactly what we are talking about when we talk about the contents of the book. You can snag that at standingstoneshealing.com/ready. But I do recommend tuning into the Reiki Race Summit. But for as awesome as the Reiki Race Summit is, it doesn't allow for connection. There's no opportunity to connect with other viewers and no opportunity to discuss the talks. I don't know about you, but sometimes I'll listen to a talk, whether it's at the Reiki Race Summit or some other conference or summit, and I'll think, man, I would love to just have a chat about this. I would love to interact with others who have tuned into this talk, to hear their thoughts, to hear their experiences, their feedback and opinions, and even their advice on that topic. And so it was very important as I was conceptualizing the Reiki Business Summit to make sure that there was plenty of opportunity for discussion, including discussion of the speaker topics. So back in April, as I was contemplating the summit, well, actually, as it just popped into my head, there wasn't a whole lot of contemplation. It was just a like, yes, we need a Reiki Business Summit. There's the thought. And then the second thought was, how am I going to organize this? So it wasn't even a thought of, oh, do I really want to do this? It was simply, how am I going to do this? What is the way in which it's going to be organized? And so for me, one of the main considerations was the format. What kind of format was this going to take? And if you are contemplating creating a summit, a conference, whatever kind of event, I encourage you to also ask yourself then, what kind of format do I want for this event? So format meaning, what's the container that this event is going to be placed in, if you will? And so, like I said, I really thought that container needed to include speakers on Reiki business topics for that kind of conference aspect to it, that learning aspect. But then that there also needed to be plenty of interaction and discussion, the opportunity to come together, and also for it to be live. So part of that container, that structure for the summit was immediately the thought was this needs to be live. Of course, I'm familiar with Reiki Raise, the summit, and other kinds of summits. But I knew that this summit needed to be live. Now, as it pertains to the way in which we might structure our summit, there are different ways to do it. So, of course, I wanted it to be live for that very important connection component. But you can have a recorded summit. So you can offer a summit that is recorded. Maybe you conduct the interviews, you or maybe a group. You don't have to do this alone. At the Reiki Business Summit, Pam Allen LeBlanc and Karen Cagg are going to talk about collaboration. And so you don't have to do this alone. But there are interviews in which you interview someone on a topic, whatever the structure is for your summit in terms of whatever that need is that is being met and having topics based upon that need. But this is how the Reiki Race Summit works. It is pre-recorded interviews. So like my interview for the Reiki Race Summit was back in like June, I think. It's going to air in November. So that's one way to do it. Another way to do it that is common is to have your presenters, if this is how you're doing it, to have your presenters record their presentation and send you the recording. And then you are simply organizing all of the recordings. That's another way to do it. I wanted to go with the live presentations for that interactive piece. And so at the end of each presentation, there's time for live Q&A. So as a registrant, as an attendee, you can ask questions live after the presentation and get your questions answered. And so I thought that was a really great dynamic way to host the summit with that live aspect rather than the recorded aspect. Because one thing I could have done was to have the presenters send me their recordings or to interview them and then have live discussion based upon the presentations. So to have the presentations pre-recorded, attendees watch them, we then have discussions live. There are all different kinds of ways to be able to do it, but it was really something that it very much from the immediate get-go was that it would be best for this to be live, fully live with the presentations as well. Now, I will say that if you have a recorded summit, recorded interviews, recorded presentations, however you might want to do it, There is more work for you in terms of if there's any editing that needs to be done, any formatting that needs to be done, any, adding an intro or an outro, music if you want, all kinds of things to consider. But if you would do it in that kind of pre-recorded format, there is more work involved. With a live format, this was actually not part of my reasoning or my thinking for having it fully live. But as I think about it now, it's actually less work for me. Because I don't need to do any editing. I don't need to do any collection of the presentations. The presenters are just going to show up and offer their presentations live. Now, if you're curious, the presenters for the Reiki Business Summit are, let me see if I can remember these in order. First of all, Mary Raposo is kicking us off on Friday with a discussion of visibility in your Reiki business. So how to be visible, including on your own terms. So if you are a highly sensitive person, you identify as an empath, many of us do. If you are an introvert, if you identify as introverted or even quote unquote shy, then this talk will definitely help you to feel empowered to get more visible on your own terms. On Saturday, I am talking about community. So how to define and find and create your own community, your own tribe, and the importance of community on our Reiki business journey. So I'll be talking about that on Saturday. Andrea Kennedy is talking on Saturday about attracting clients. And so, of course, no matter where you are on your Reiki business journey, this is a popular topic. As a matter of fact, let's admit it's the number one topic, number one most asked question. How do I attract clients? Andrea Kennedy is going to assist with that on Saturday. On Sunday, Colleen Benelli is talking about creating our Reiki business identity and making sure that we have an aligned Reiki business identity. Now, you may be thinking, I've been in Reiki business for years. I don't need that. I'm good. The fact is that our Reiki business changes and evolves. And so as our Reiki business changes and evolves, it's important for us to continually check in and make sure that our Reiki business identity is still in alignment. So Colleen is going to help us with that. Also on Sunday, Michaela Daystar is talking with us about having a trauma-informed Reiki practice. This is such an important topic, one that we don't talk about often enough. And we all have clients who have different traumatic experiences. And what we really don't want is to contribute to those traumatic experiences in our work with our clients. It's really easy for us to accidentally do, and Michaela Daystar is going to help us to not do it. And then on Monday, Karen Cagg and Pam Allen LeBlanc are closing us up with a talk about collaboration, which I love because, of course, the whole summit is about collaboration. It's about connection. It's about, like I'll talk about on Saturday, community. And so those are the talks for the summit. When I thought about the summit and I said, yes, we're going to do this. Yes, we're going to have speakers. Yes, we're going to have interaction. The way that I decided who to invite, I invited the speakers. And the way that I decided that was that I wanted to invite people who talk about Reiki business. So who in their Reiki business have talked about, do talk about, are talking about Reiki business. And so I had a mental list of the practitioners who I wanted to invite to participate. I also invited people who I know and who I like and who I trust. You know, as the first summit, And as a brand new event, it was important for me to work with people who I knew would be understanding of any kinds of challenges that might arise, any kind of organizational difficulties that might arise, people who I know and I like and I trust. And so I reached out to those people. So for your summit, your conference, your event, I encourage when you start off and you collaborate to pick people who you know and pick people who you like and pick people who you want to be working with. Because what you don't want to do, or at least what I didn't want to do, is to invite someone who I didn't know or I didn't like or I didn't trust. And then to have challenges working with them or challenges with some of the behind the scenes aspects of the summit, challenges with legal types of things with the summit. So I wanted to, for this first summit especially, reach out to practitioners who I felt confident working with. And then on my list, my mental list that I had, initially the summit was going to be 2 days. I'll talk a little bit more about that structure in part 2 of the Hosting Your Summit podcast episode. But originally the summit was supposed to be for 2 days, and that did not happen. It's a 4-day summit, but originally it was supposed to be 2 days. And the reason that it became 4 days is that everyone I reached out to and asked on my mental list, as I went down the list, there were more people on the list, but as I started going down the list, everyone said yes. And I didn't expect that. Anytime that we ask someone to collaborate with us in our Reiki business, we ask someone to participate in an event or whatever, it's always important for us to anticipate that people are going to say no. And it doesn't even have to do with us necessarily or the event. It can just have to do with people's schedules, what they have going on, what they are prioritizing in their Reiki business. And so because of that, I didn't expect that everyone I asked would say yes, but everyone I asked said yes. And so then in order to, really fit everyone in, as I was doing the asking and getting the yeses and, getting back the yeses from everyone I was asking and realizing, we're going to need to expand the number of days of the summit. That was something that was unexpected, but a pleasant surprise. And so it quickly became a 4-day summit rather than a 2-day summit. By the way, if you want to join in on the Reiki Business Summit, of course, you can learn more and register at standingstoneshealing.com/summit. But please don't delay because early bird pricing ends on September 30th. So in next week's episode, I'm going to talk more about the Reiki Business Summit, talk more about hosting your own summit or event with some tips and some of my experiences, and taking you behind the scenes even further of the Reiki Business Summit. I hope that you'll join us, standingstoneshealing.com/summit. Sending lots of blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business. Thanks for tuning in to the Build Your Reiki Business podcast. Please like, share, subscribe, and send to a friend. Learn more about the Build Your Reiki Business program at standingstoneshealing.com/build, sending blessings and best wishes to your Reiki business.